Hi, Dave, Emery. It's so nice to have you back. We kind of had a bit of a long wait here for this next conscious evolution, but I hope you're well and I hope it goes well. How are you?
Fine, thank you very much. And delighted to see you. I think you look absolutely fabulous, Jane. And I love the pictures behind you. Yeah, I can see that you have really been doing your creative consciousness as we speak with all that beautiful visual art. That's fantastic. So thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here. I know with your touring schedule, it makes it kind of difficult. Okay, so as you know, well, this is going to be a little bit of an introduction with questions afterwards, so just bear with me. And as you know, I've been looking at the cave art in France regarding the life of Mary Magdalene. And I believe that the entire caveman Darwinian psyop was invented by the Roman Catholic Church to rid the south of France of the last vestiges of the true Christ consciousness and the Magdala Ascension signature, which is my new thing, by the way, to basically make us believe that we came from apes and not God, and so that they could be the intermediaries between us and God and then control us. That's it all in a nutshell, even though I've got a 12-part series on Substack about that. So our physical evolution is then overriding our spiritual evolution, and our progress tends more towards materialism during the industrial age rather than our conscious spiritual evolution. So I feel like I've proved this in my writing. It's a fact. But at the same time, I feel like it would serve as a very healthy measure to take these historical periods they speak of, called the Stone Age, and overlay them onto what our true galactic history has to say. So that's where you come in, Dave, with your incredible expertise on this. So my first question would be, and what I'd really like to concentrate on is what was really happening during what they say, which is weird that they called it the Magdalenian era or period, which was about 15,000 BC to 10,000 BC. And it was said to have marked the final cultural phase of the Upper Paleolithic and Mesolithic periods in Western Europe. So that let's just say the old Stone Age spanned around 20,000 years, from 30,000 BC to 10,000 BC. So what they tell us is we were all running around using stone tools and la la la. So what was really happening in our galactic history then? And after that, I'll ask you about more recent periods.
Well, that's a great introduction. You covered all the bases there, Jane. I really enjoyed that. And in fact, you've got to get this book about Mary Magdalene out there and let everybody know because it'll be fantastic. Well, with regard to what was really happening, I mean, when they talk about the Stone Age, I used to get cross about it, a few years ago. Now I just laugh because the whole thing is just incredibly hysterical. The inference that we have never had civilizations before the Sumerian, about 3000 BC, etc., is just, well, that is truly beyond the biblical. It's just insane. So anyway, let me just say, 30,000 years ago, that's before we actually hit the new Stone Age. As you say, the implication was we were in caves, running around, jumping over trees, chasing weird creatures, and manufacturing stone tools. But in fact, actually, Atlantis was still in existence and was an absolutely astounding civilization. Far beyond what we've got now. That's 30,000 years ago. And there were other pockets of really enlightened civilization all around the world, all run by angelic indigo humans and for all other types of humans as well. And then there were, of course, a wide variety of engineered humans, shall we say, primates, and associated beings that walked on two legs, they were around as well. But basically, civilization 30,000 years ago was a most impressive vehicle for humanity in those days. And it was capable of doing some astounding things like, space travel, air travel, things like, well, what can I say? It had anti-gravity machines and so on, and healing centers. So the inference that we were Stone Age savages with stone tools living in caves and fighting off saber-toothed tigers is just hilarious, honestly. And of course, the real interesting thing, Jane, is that all those people who proposed all of these different ideas about the Stone Age, the Middle Stone Age and the Paleolithic, they actually know that it's all BS. They actually do. I mean, obviously, a lot of the new archaeologists coming in and the new people being instructed, they believe in this absolute truth. But the people who really set this up way back, as you know, 150 years ago or whatever, they know that it was just a timeline narrative thrown in to destabilize us all.
That is amazing. You have confirmed everything that I discovered all on my own before I ever even found out about your incredible galactic history that you speak of. So I guess now all of my questions about the Mesolithic, Stone Age, and all that are all moot. But let's bring up right now Tartaria, because they say that what happened was that there was this final division in the Stone Age in Eurasia, Africa, parts of Asia. We know that that covered Tartaria, the area of Tartaria, and they tell us that the New Stone Age was characterized by the introduction of agriculture, domestication of animals, and the development of more complex societies. But as far as I know, we didn't need agriculture then because these Tartarians were said to have been breatharians and they didn't need agriculture. And nobody's ever found a bathroom or a toilet in any of these Tartarian structures, which means they didn't even have the same digestive system that we had. So then that means all that is a crock too. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, this is where it gets very complicated, Jane, and gets very exciting and thrilling as well. If you enjoy thriller novels, romances, historical genre, etc., you've come to the right place because you're going to get the whole lot right here on Earth. Planet Earth has got a number of timelines which you can sit down and read about if you really want to and you want to have a fabulous adventure. The thing is that I've made a little joke about that, but in fact, what it really I'm saying is that you see, Earth has been, I was going to say the victim, but I'm not going to use that word. Earth has been the theatre show, the sort of the globe theatre of the local universe, whereby lots of different timelines have been allowed to operate and flourish. And they weren't anything to do with the original creative cosmic design timeline, wherein people can expand their consciousness in a seamless way and yet still have plenty of contrast and plenty of excitement and enjoyment. That's the original timeline narrative that we are really all involved in. Our higher selves are involved in that. And when you examine your own self, Jane, you realize that the things that really count to you, and I'm speaking for you in this case, are things like love, joy, the thrill of creation, the feeling of unity. All of these things are what really drives you inside. However, most of our timelines that you see happening, most of our narratives are actually not like that. They have all of that within them, but they also have fear, they have contention, they have conflict, they have despair, they have distress, and things like this. And what we've been trained to believe is a number of things in these timelines, these timeline narratives. We've been trained to believe that we are not worthy, That's why these things have happened, that God doesn't love us. That's why these things have happened, that we are sinful. That's why these things have happened, that it's just an accidental universe and we came to the wrong place, wrong time, and that's what has happened. These are the narratives that we have been playing out with time out of mind. And the real narrative of love and joy and oneness and togetherness has really been running concurrently with them. So let me address Tartaria. Tartaria is, and I'm not quoting here from any records or documents that could be regarded as evidence. I'm just saying that this is another timeline of when angelic humanity was actually on a probable future of expanding consciousness in the Breatharian way that you mentioned, without damaging any other life, without creating karma, without expanding into the confines of other people's free will. So the Tartarian civilization truly exists. It was shut down on that timeline, and we see the signals, the frequency signals, the signatures of that in more and more, because we are expanding our consciousness. So in the last 30 years, you will find 30 or 40 years, you'll find people are talking more and more about Tartaria, and as I know that they are, and that we're finding out more about it because that timeline is concurrent, is running with us, just as many, many other timelines are running with us. So if I can bring it back, I hope I'm not straying too far from what you asked, but if I can bring it back to Mary Magdalene and the Magdalene issues, that's another timeline which was set into the grids, the frequency grids. A holographic TV screen, if you like, was suddenly plugged into another timeline narrative. And this was the one that they wanted to override all of the other narratives that you've just been explaining how they did that. And so that we are not only confused, we're not sure exactly what is reality and what is not reality. There is only one reality, but in fact, with many, many looped timelines running concurrently, it's easy to see how confused one can become unless one absolutely knows one thing. And this one thing, Jane, is what I always go on about, and you do too. It's who are you? It's your identity. As soon as you know that, and you come close to feeling it within you, then these other timelines reveal themselves to be false light timelines and not the true reality.
That's exactly, you've just answered my next question, which was connected to the Roman Catholic Church, where they wanted to become like the world kingpin of religion. And their biggest desire was for us to never know who we really are. So let's take a little journey now back to the Cathars, because they are very much linked to the cave art in the south of France. And so I'm just going to say a few things about the Cathars just for the audience. And you can correct me if you think anything's wrong, okay? Because I'm not the expert that you are. But I'm going to say that not so long after Jeshua 9 was the third Christ. Is that correct?
The second Christ.
Oh, he was the second Christ. Was he the one that
Yes,
was with Mary Magdalene?
that's right. Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. So the second Christ was Jeshua 9, who was said to have been crucified. Really, it was Arahabi in his place. So he had walked the earth, which, according to, as you know, I love Anatoly Fomenko and his timeline because it matches up in the 1100s when Christ was on earth. In the 1500s, you remember that Joseph Scaliger had added 1,000 years to our history. So that's when you add those 1,000 years, you get Christ walking around in France with Mary Magdalene in the 1100s, which is right. It would have been the offspring of the Cathar religion, would have been directly from the spiritual depths of the Christ consciousness and the Mary Magdalene Ascension signature. So then in 1143, there was the first confirmed report of a Cathar group, and that was in Cologne in France. And that's where I think Mary Magdalene and Christ were. And then in 1167, there was a thing called the Council of Felix Lauraget, which established a unified leadership of the Cathars. So that was the beginning of the Cathars officially. And that's where I think the Cathars got together. They all got together in a huddle and they agreed that the Roman Catholic Church was absolutely pure evil. And then what we look at in our history books today tells us it was dualism. That's it, dualism. And so the Roman Catholic Church was essentially just an extension of the Romans, who we know wanted to kill Christ. So then we go back to the 1200s, early, like 1208 or so, and we've got Pope Innocent III calling for the first crusade against the Cathars. And they had hardly any time to get their spiritual movement up and running. And so a year later, we've got 20 years of a military campaign from the Roman Catholic Church, which was all happening in Albigensian. This is the Albigensian Crusades to eliminate what they called the heresy of the Cathars, of specifically Languedoc in France. So we've estimated now that there was about 1 million people who died during that crusade, and all of them were not Cathars. Some were just regular people who just lived in the south of France. And then we've got by 1325, the church has absolutely wiped them out. And then the last evidence of a Cathar community was recorded in Languedoc in 1325. So that's it. Then in 1350, we've got the Inquisitions, and then that completely eradicated the Cathar movement. I just want to make an aside comment here. If there were almost 1 million Cathars, or 500,000 to 1 million Cathars, I don't know how it is that they could say they were celibate. My question is, I'm so sure that there's much more to this story, and it probably and might involve Stargates. Am I right?
Of course, Jane, as you usually are, right? Yeah. Of course, there are Stargates involved. I love that history, and some of the dates there I didn't know. I know the basic dates, but wonderful, and thank you for that information there that you explained. The Stargate, well, yes, of course. Stargate 12, which is in Montségur in southern France, as you know. That is a critical frequency zone for the whole of Earth, but not just for Earth, for the whole of the universal matrix. Now, this is where history becomes difficult to absorb, because you're really talking about two things here. You're talking about what apparently is happening geopolitically around the world, even today, but underneath the surface, there's another story being played out. And that's the story of the fallen angelics, who have really been running the show underneath. Through the veil, the fourth dimensional frequency veils, the curtains, which nobody can see into, but they can see us because they're higher dimensional beings. So this is where the story becomes a little bit difficult for many people to follow. But in fact, really what was happening, and you introduced this with your use of the word Stargate, there are elemental energy centers within every physical form, and the Earth has 12 Stargate energy sites. They're portals through which energy passes into and out of. We also have in our bodies 12 portals, Stargates, and energy passes through them and into them. And it is these energy portals, these gateways, that really the fallen angelics were particularly concerned about controlling. And to control Earth, they learned that they had to control the angelic human race line, all of them, somehow through their DNA. Consequently, a great deal has been mentioned about the heresy of the Cathars. Now, the Roman Catholic Church ministers didn't know about the fallen angelics. They just thought that there were there was evil and good, that God was good, that's Jehovah, and that Lucifer and Satan were evil. They didn't realize about fallen angelics. And so they would definitely proclaim that the Cathars were heretical and therefore must be stopped. But really, it wasn't the heresy that the fallen angelics were after. Fallen angelics were after all the knowledge that the Cathars carried with them, the copies of the various books of Enoch, of Jeshua, of Miriam, of John. Well, John the Baptist didn't actually manage to write his book, but they were after those tomes, and they were also after the Signet disc and the CDT plate that they carried for number 12. So they were looking for all of these particular ingredients. And so those are the primary reasons for why the Cathars were so ruthlessly hunted down and slaughtered. In fact, in 1244, a small group of between 4 and 6 of those Cathars escaped Montségur and left with the Signet discs and the copies of the information and the details of the stargates of Earth. And the implication is that they actually vanished to America. They went to America, and a small coterie of Knights Templars went with them. And that's another timeline story narrative, which has yet to be fully revealed. But all that you've been saying there about the Cathars is particularly important because the Cathars were much more vital to our historical narrative than the actual history books really tell us. They were very, very important and carried a great deal of information about who we really are, our true identity.
So that is why they had to run around France frantically like little ants painting caves, and so that they could turn them into textbooks. It was the priest Emery and I, known as the Prehistoric Pope, who went into the caves then after they'd been manufactured and did tracings of them and put them into textbooks and sent them out all over the world in different languages. So we've got to a point today where 81% of the population, well, last time I checked, it's probably less now, thinks that we came from apes. But I'd like to say here too that you alluded earlier to the fact that I believe it was the Anunnaki who created a primate form of human being. They mixed primates with the angelic human because they were trying to create a slave race, right? And so those are the skulls that the Catholic Church financed, and Prince Albert I of Monaco, who founded the first institute in order to go and find the skulls that those creepy fallen angels, the beings that they had manufactured back in that day, right? That's what they were looking for, so that they could then hold them up to the public and say, look, we came from apes. And that's why so many people believe that today. And then I have a question about what you were saying earlier. I've heard of the CDT plates, but if you could just tell us a little bit about the Signet disc and what that is.
The Signet discs are larger discs. The CDT plates are small discs, probably the size of a grapefruit, in circumference. And the Signet plates are the size of probably a dinner plate, made of the same selenite crystal covered in silver. And what they do is they have the codes for opening all of their specific stargates. So they don't contain masses of information about cosmos and how it works and healing, etc., like the CDT plates do and the history. But they are operative openings for doorways into the stargates. So they are very, very important. If you have a Signet disc in your possession, then you can open the Stargate that that particular disk operates. And of course, then you can possibly find out where all the others are as well, because they are linked. So it was a very important thing to have. The CDT plates were critical because they gave more information, but the Signet plates were specifically to open Stargates, and they were hunted very remorselessly because they were so important. Eventually, the Anunnaki managed to control Abaddon, that's Stargate 10, Giza, that's Stargate 4, Vela Pusey, that's Stargate 11, Bermuda, that's Stargate 3. And they were looking for all of these Stargates to try and control. They didn't get number 12, that's the Cathar one, because the Cathars had the opening signet for that.
I just love those Cathars. I have another question I'm sure our audience would be asking too, is why did they want to open the Stargates?
Well, Earth is number 3 in the universal grid. There are 12 signet openings or Stargates in the universe. And number 12 is Lyra, and it's connected to number 12 in Earth, which is Montségur. So if you can secure Montségur and you can control it, then you have access to the universal Stargate in Lyra, which controls the 12th dimension and the whole of the universe. So, of course, to be able to control the whole of Earth, you need to have more than one Stargate, etc. But Stargates are important because when you control a Stargate, the same as if you control your own physical body, you control the energy that goes into it and out of it. That's just the same. So whatever you put in to your system, you get out of your system. So if you put low frequency energy into your system through fear and thinking, etc., and the same as you do for the universal Stargate, you get the same things coming out. It becomes toxic. And so basically what we're really talking about is controlling the Stargate energy inputs and outputs. Whatever goes in shall come out. So this is a lesson for us all. And the Stargates are vital. So the Earth Stargate, Earth being number 3 in the 36912, if you remember, Tesla said 369 being the numbers of frequency, well, it's 36912 actually. They're all on the right-hand side of the Cathar grid, and 3 is the first one, that's Earth. If you can control 3, you can get to 6. If you can control 6 and 3, you get to 9. If you control those 3, you can get to 12. And so that's why Earth became such a significant target. Well, Earth was the prize, but angelic humans were the target. Because we held the codes to open the frequency grids of Earth.
So that's what the Cathars were doing. They were opening that up so that all of the angelic humans could ascend ultimately.
Well, you ascend through a Stargate, yes. Akhenaten in 1350 BC, he was a ninth dimensional avatar. He was a Melchizedek Anu. He was an Anunnaki, but he was on the white side, the good side, and he used the Stargate beneath the Great Pyramid of Giza to help many Anu ascend into the 5th dimension. There was a terrible accident there eventually, and that's why that all stopped. But basically, he was helping people to ascend through the 4th Stargate. You can help people to ascend if they have the codes through any of the Stargates. However, you do have to have the codes, and you do have to know the protocols for exchange of energy. And that's another thing. Way back in deep into the past of history, all angelic humans knew the protocols for exchanging energy and being able to ascend. It was natural. It was like breathing, like being a breatharian. And so consequently, to stop them from doing that and to trap them on Earth, a lot of this knowledge had to be stopped, had to be shut off at its source. And the way to do that was, of course, to make people fearful and to make people forget who they are, and that they are sinful, weak, nasty, unprincipled beings who must obey their gods. And the gods, of course, were those who they said made us. That's where the other narrative comes in about where humanity comes from. Springs out of trees and primates, and we were made into reasonable human beings because of the gods.
Okay, so the story about us ascending from Earth 3 to 6 to 9 to 12. Now, you've been telling us lately also about the slingshot evac, so we can no longer go that way to ascend. Is that correct? Am I correct in saying that?
Well, this is just my interpretation. I mean, a lot of people still believe that the stairway to heaven remains as it is. And that is one lifetime at a time, you ascend into the different harmonic universes. There are four of them. That is, and 3 dimensions in each. That means 12 dimensions. So depending when you have the codes, your DNA expands enough or has assembled enough energy, then you can ascend into the next harmonic universe. That would be Tara in dimension 5. And after that, it would be dimension 8 in Gaia, and then dimension 11 in Aramatena, and so on. You would climb the stairway to heaven and expand your consciousness of self that way. That's the long and the normal pathway. Unfortunately, there is a distinct element now of the fact that because of so much corruption and distortion in the frequency fields of our four universes, that the stairway has been corrupted as well. For example, people who want to try and expand their light body are taking a chance now because the light body frequencies have been distorted. And so to try and expand one's light body, like we used to be doing, is no longer advisable. We are now working with the plasma body, which can't be corrupted. But the plasma body really is effective from the fourth harmonic dimension, which is up to to dimension 12. And so consequently, the evac through the Aurora platforms is a sort of another stairway through 5 platforms, which are separated away from the normal original stairway and the corruption. And so we can take an evac route outside the normal stairway and up to the fourth harmonic universe without having to go through the corruption.
And apparently, this is what your upcoming book that you're almost finished by Wednesday. That what your book is going to be all about. So I want to make sure that people go to evermore.com and look at that, because we're going to be looking at financing and publishing and tours and everything, because this information is so vital for humanity right now. And from a personal testimonial point of view, when I didn't know about this information, before I had ever heard of such a thing as our galactic history and science, by the way, where spirituality is connected with the sciences, I was like a lost soul floating around trying to put the pieces together. And when I heard about our galactic history, which is what Dave writes about and talks about so succinctly and beautifully, is when all the pennies started dropping like rain until I was just sitting under a pile of pennies. And it seemed like I had all the answers with every penny that I would pick up and look at. It was incredible. And that's how I was assured that that cave art in France was manufactured in order to make us believe that we came from apes and we would never know who we really were. And then the other day I came across a cave that I hadn't seen before called the Cosquer Cave. And oh my goodness, the lengths they went to on this one. Number one, it's underwater. So you have to travel 120 feet down into the ocean, and then you have to go through this 10-foot high tunnel that's 64 feet long, where you come up into this cave, and it has all these paintings of animals in it, just charcoal, not much color at all, because I think, you know what I think they did? I think the charcoal they used to do the drawings was mined and tested with their carbon testing dates for six. The carbon testing can test up to 60,000 years accurately, apparently. And I think they mined that carbon, and I think they drew with the carbon that was that date in order for all the little academicians to come in and start measuring and weighing, as they do, these fallen angels. They measure and weigh everything. And they looked at the charcoal that had been used and they said, oh, yes, this charcoal is 30,000 years old. This means this happened 30,000 years ago. There's just absolutely no question about it. And then they went and they wrote it in all their papers and they put it out there once again because they keep like Altamira. Finding Altamira is a movie about the very first cave that was found in Spain in 1876. And they got Antonio Banderas to come in and be the big discoverer. And they try to keep it alive, keep it alive. And they're always discovering, ooh, a new cave. And of course, this is worth billions to them, their tourist industry. They have people filing and filing and filing through these. They're not even the original caves. They've made replicas of these caves. And so with each soul that walks through, that is an affirmation to them, a ritual. It's a ritual that they have the energy and the sustenance from that being to back up all their lies. It's just incredible. Plus, these people actually pay for this. And so they've got that going on all over the south of France, exactly Languedoc, where the Cathars themselves were practicing their beautiful, deep spiritual ways of being close to the earth. They never wanted to possess land. And that's another thing, by the way, the Roman Catholic Church wanted that land in the south of France that they knew that Cathars didn't own because the Cathars didn't possess land. So it goes on and on and on and on and on to the point where the detail of this cave art gets to a point where I believe they found the real skull of Mary Magdalene and they turned it into a mannequin model of a Stone Age woman in the Lasso replica caves. And they literally bombed Mary Magdalene back to the Stone Age in that move, where they got the skull and formed a face over it and dressed it all up, appropriately for the Stone Age period. That was the work of Emery Breuil, who was a priest, never practiced one single priestly act in his life. He was a total plant, running around in a little Cossack, looking like a priest, but he was really a henchman for the popes of the Roman Catholic Church. So what I would love to do, because I know you have an incredible imagination, Dave. So I was thinking, we're at about 1910 now, and you're at a party, would have been a bit earlier than that, late 1800s. You're at the World Fair at a party, a ball at the Trocadero. And in walks Abbé Henri Breuil in his Cossack as the prehistoric pope, and he happens to sit down at the table with you. Now, what would you say to him?
I feel that's just a brilliant investigative journalist's question. What I would say to Brooke is, how old do you think Mary Magdalene really is? And his answer would be, in view of what you've just been saying, oh, Mary Magdalene wasn't the person that you think she was. She was just somebody, a woman who existed 30,000 years ago and who was the propagator of a large number of human tribes once they had ascended from barbarism. So he would be talking on one level, and I'd be talking on another, and I would probably be the one who would be arrested.
Okay, well, that was a short conversation. I think my conversation would have been even shorter. So, how dare he get in the way of our ascension and make us suffer over and over and over in all these lifetimes that we're recycled in? Like who do they think they are? And I'm wondering if there's such a thing as ancestral balancing of karma, with those who have persecuted us over these many lifetimes. Would would we be seeing some kind of retribution anytime soon?
Well, they call it cause and effect, but it's really it's the same sort of thing. It's what goes up must come down, etc. So, for example, the persistent low frequency actions of so many people, what they were doing there was unacceptable in so many different ways, is to deny humanity the opportunity to be truly aware of its own self. But this was a deliberate policy. And as for karma, well, of course, as your frequency descends, so does your ability to create. And of course, we know that most of the very low descending frequency beings that have inhabited Earth, and particularly those who have been often running the show, like in the Vatican and in the snake corridors of power in many places in the world. Those people cannot create. They lose the ability to create as their frequency descends, and that's why they have to more and more rely upon the energies, the blood, the sweat, the time, the tears, the talent, and the creative impulses of angelic humanity, because they have lost it, and they depend upon us to actually continue to live. So that is the effect of their karmic burden.
It's not sustainable. So what I'd like to add to that part is my kind of usual shtick, but you never know anybody new who's listening, so it's for them. We were all born creative geniuses, just in case you didn't know that. And it's sucked out of us with our education so that we become the slaves of the very people that would entrap us in this cyclical, endless way of being without ever being able to ascend. So, what our job to do now is more than any other time on earth is to take stock of that creation currency which resides within everyone. It cannot be taken away. It can be stifled, but it can never be taken away. And to take that creative currency within you and turn it toward the new true earth that we all really desire to live in, the new true earth, featuring unity consciousness, joy, love, harmony, divinity, the balance of the masculine and feminine. The feminine comes back. Yeah, that world. If you could just turn your attention away from that horrible mess over there that we've created with a war full of wars and lack, scarcity, maiming. It's actually a death cult. And they will tell you, oh, okay, we believe in Lucifer. Yep, the god of light. Yep, okay, we're guilty of that. But that is just a way of deflecting attention from their true God, the ultimate God, Moloch. Moloch is their god because he demands the sacrifices of human beings. And in those sacrifices, he rewards these demonic fallen angels and their human hybrid soldier agents with all the wealth in the world so that they can go floating around in a yacht in the Bahamas whenever they want. But we have to grovel and come to our last penny at the end of the month and worry about feeding our pets and our children. No, that's all over now. And the only thing we have to do is take our focus away from that and start putting it into this new true earth that we envision. And the way that we do this is you were born, each one of us is born with a passion or an affinity for something, whatever it is. You go toward your passion. And from there, you build up your creativity. But if you really want to fast forward your creativity really quickly, I would learn the basics of art because it teaches you how to bring elements together in a harmonic composition. And from there, the true purpose of art is to get to the zenith of that state, which I think Nikola Tesla is an exemplary example of, because he was taking the ethers and light and sound and frequency and the 3 6 9 12 that you were talking to earlier, the key to the universe. He was taking all of those things and he was providing humanity with free energy. And once you have free energy, all your time is able to be directed toward creativity, creation. And what does Prime Creator Source do all day long? Do you think he's sitting on a cloud picking his nose, or she is? No. Prime Creator Source is sitting there creating. And we are the diminutive of the creation model. All of us have the power to create. In fact, some of us, our higher selves, I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Dave, but we can create whole planets. Is that correct?
Well, yes, in some of your higher selves, Jane, you are a galactic sun. And knowing you as I do, and the astonishing energy you have, and the uniqueness that you've got, I know that you are truly a galactic sun. And you are shining throughout the whole of creation. So just way to go, baby.
So, well, I'd like to keep this under an hour. And I was going to go into a little bit about the Ice Age and how it fits over the Stone Age, but I think I'm over that unless you could tell us anything about the Ice Ages that would be of significance to this particular conversation. Because
Well,
we've been told there was an Ice Age, right? And it started about 3 million years ago. Then we get told that it's continuing through all the way to today. And we've also been told it ended 12,000 years ago. And at the same time, we're being told that there's global warming or climate change. So why don't we just start quickly with what was happening on Earth 3 million years ago, really? And was that an ice age?
no. Um, well, I mean, lots of things happened 5.5 million years ago. And 5.3 million years ago, as a result of the electric wars, the Mediterranean basin, which is a huge valley, basically, with mountains in it and so on, that got filled up. That was 5.3 million years ago as a result of the electric wars, and all sorts of stuff happened. We had a pole shift. That changes things dramatically. But let's fast forward through to the Ice Age you're really talking about, and that the Illuminati are really interested in, and your priest, the false priest Breuil, was involved in the times of those. That particular Ice Age. I mean, there have been some, but that particular Ice Age was an engineered one,
Oh,
because the Galactic Federation and a couple of other collectives and anarchy collectives actually collapsed the hydro suspension fields of Earth in 21,900 BC. So 22,000 years ago, the hydrosuspension fields of Earth were collapsed. Now, those are frequency fields. We're like repulsion zones. They're repulsion zones between the ether, the water, and the Earth. And they keep things in balance. That's why you've got, the water stays at its level, and then you've got the atmosphere and so on, and you've got the ether and you've got the Earth. And so they're all kept in a balance. But when the hydrosuspension fields collapsed just momentarily because of a deliberate engineering of the frequencies, it collapsed everything and reduced the temperature dramatically. That's when that particular ice age began, about 22,000 years ago, and it finished 14,000 BC. So that would mean that, of course, around about 13,000 BC, our Neolithic age sort of started, the Stone Age and all this sort of thing. So it all fits into their narrative. But in fact, that ice age was an engineered event, like so many have been.
Sorry, who engineered it, Dave?
The Galactic Federation, amongst other collectives, they were Anunnaki collectives. They've been behind a lot of the stuff that has happened on Earth, and which the Illuminati have been creating narratives about. So, for example, the flood of 9,558 BC, it's as accurate as that. That particular flood was the final fall of Atlantis. And that wasn't a global flood like the Noah story tells you. The global flood was, in fact, the electric wars of 5.5 million years ago. That covered 85% of the Earth. But the 9,558 BC flood was only a partial flood. And it was after that humanity really lost sight of its true purpose and its vision of self, and it's been downhill since then, because that's when what we would call the Stone Age began to really manifest itself, and we lost sight of all the civilizations that we'd been a part of before. So that was a big timeline shift. So we had a timeline insert right there. That was another timeline insert. There's been about 14 of them. So there are about 14 timeline inserts traveling through as narratives for the last few billion years. And what's really happening now, Jane, and this is slightly separate from what your target of your topic, but what we're seeing now is a return of the original timeline. So all of these other timelines are being dissolved as we speak. Wow. And you're doing your bit to dissolve this particular timeline about the histories and the art and the creations, etc. And you're doing your investigative journalist aspect so brilliantly, because that's dissolving, it's unraveling it as you write and speak. You unravel that timeline.
Wow.
Because once people start considering that a timeline reality doesn't exist, it's like, for example, it's belief in value. So if I hand you a $20 note, you will believe in that $20 note not because it has any value, except in your own belief. So everybody around you in your collective and you believe that the $20 note has value, and that's your belief in value. It's the same with the reality outpicturing field. If you believe that it exists, if you believe that you are a primate and you were originally swinging in a tree, then that is the belief that you will give it as value. But once you start to unravel that, then what happens is that you lose that belief in value. So you don't believe it anymore. For example, if I gave a $20 note to a monkey and said, this is worth $20, you can buy a lot of stuff with this, he'll throw it away or eat it because he doesn't see the belief in value. And it's the same with what you're doing so brilliantly, Jane, with this particular timeline narrative you're working on. You're unraveling its belief. And so people will no longer believe in it. Once people no longer believe in it, it ceases to exist. It vanishes.
It's funny because a lot of people say, well, I never believed that I came from an ape, but they don't take it any further than that. So this is why I think it's so important to turn around and say, oh, okay, wow, you're very wise. But what's the backstory? Let's get to the really deep, let's do a root canal on that. And then once we've done that, so much is revealed. It is just incredible. Well, I'd just like to say, Dave, you're the most enlightening person that I know. And every time you share your information, I got bells ringing all over the place with I have so many questions in my head that I never remember any of them. So I'll just leave it at that. And I'll say thank you so much for being here. And I wish you well in your journey that you're on right now. And then I'm thinking that I'm sure everybody would just love to know what those 14 timeline inserts are. And I'm thinking perhaps our next show could be about that. And I'll ask the audience to confer with me and see if that's what they would like to know about next, too.
Okay. Well, look, Jane, I'm in your hands on that. Just call me and let me know, and I'd be delighted to appear on your show. I think it's brilliant. And by the way, thank you for teaching me so much as well, because we're in this together, and it's a teamwork as we walk the same pathway together into enlightenment, hand in hand with all of your other members there. And I think between us, we can dissolve so many more timeline realities.
Well, I take great delight in dissolving the memory of the prehistoric Pope Henri Breuil. May you turn to space dust. So
I agree.
thanks so much, Dave.
Okay, speak to you soon.
Okay, bye.